Good morning, GCC. Good morning. Man, y'all came ready to sing this morning, didn't you? Good grief, y'all sounded good. We're going to fire them for sure. Sorry. You say? Oh, Lord. Just kidding. We need them. How's everybody doing today? Good. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to everybody who's here. Thank you to everybody who's watching online. We're excited to have the opportunity to do some church together. I really hope you're doing well. If you're just joining us, we're in the middle of a visionary series where we're learning how to be the church. Why? Because a while back we looked and we realized we had church in our name. And we were like, we better make sure we're doing this, right? We could change it. We could just be like Golden Corner Sunday Hangouts or something. I didn't really work on that very good. Don't get mad at me. I'm just being a smarty pants, as my grandmother would say. Smarty, don't you hate that's what she said to me the other day? She said, son, don't be a smarty pants. I'm like, ooh. I'm trying to say it mean. We're learning how to be the church, which is because Jesus asked us to do that. We've already discovered much on this journey. For instance, we discovered in the very first message that church is supposed to be, all right, good. Y'all awake? Y'all ready to roll, right? Church is supposed to be alive. It's supposed to be moving, growing, fulfilling a purpose. Just like the body that church is constantly compared to in the Bible. Next thing we learn is church is supposed to be for everybody, hence the name of the series. A lot more to it. Church is supposed to be for everybody, and when we say everybody, we mean everybody. Okay, good. We discovered just a couple of weeks ago that everybody, every believer, has an important part. Y'all remember that? Everybody has an important part. Every single person who believes in Jesus as a part of the church has a special place, a function, a part, a special work that they bring into the body. We came to understand that without our part, the body of Christ is incomplete. We discovered that it's up to us to find and do our part. Y'all remember all this? Shake your heads, yes? Good. Last week we began sharing a few things to help us find our part, help us do our part, but really just to help the church be the church. And last week we talked about the fact that one of the first things that has to happen is everybody gets, what's the word? Anybody remember? See, I stumped you. Everybody gets together. That was the message last week. Everybody gets together. We need to prioritize as believers spending time with other believers. Time and time again, we are shown that the body is meant to be together, that it functions better together. We will most definitely go farther and accomplish more when we're connected in relationships with other believers, other people who are relying on us, who are helping us, people who we spur one another on. We talked about the fact that we wouldn't make it alone. There again, we talked about the fact that this is something that's up to us, right? Y'all remember this? We talked about group ministry. We talked about, but here's the deal. We talked about penciling in spending time with other believers in our calendar. What if you did that on a weekly basis? What if you did that on every other week? Brittany and I, we just had a couple over that we've never had over to our house this past week again, and it was awesome. Every time we do it, guys, we leave those times together going, man, that was good. That benefited us. Everybody gets together. So everybody caught up? Everybody online caught up? Now we can continue on. Another step, another day we're going to move forward in this journey together. And I'm excited to share the next piece of this, of how we can be the church. Is everybody ready? Yes. One more time, we can do that a little better. Y'all had a lot of gumption this morning. Is everybody ready? Yes. Good. In order to do that, guess what I got to do? Good. See, y'all, man, I'm telling you, we got this thing happening. I got to tell you a story. We've been in Acts for the duration of this series, and there we shall remain. If you want to follow along, you can turn your Bibles to Acts chapter 9. That's where we're going to be picking up. But today we're not talking about Saul or the Apostle Paul. We're going to be talking about somebody else who was apparently pretty important to that first church. And we're introduced to her in verse 36. Here it is. Verse 36. There was a believer in Joppa named Tabitha, which in Greek is Dorcas. Now, this is one of my favorite stories. I actually have used this story before about 3 years ago. Because I love reading the story. It's a really short story. This is the first time that we're introduced to Tabitha in the Bible, and we're given only one superlative by which to know her. Did you see what it was? Believer. Meaning she believed in Jesus. There's no other credentials or prefixes to allude to special qualities or titles, just that she was a believer and that her name in the Greek is Dorcas. Okay? Now, a lesser man would tell you that the abbreviated version of Dorcas is Dork. Therefore, Tabitha and Dork are synonymous with one another. One might also point out that my sister's name is Tabitha. But listen. I'm a senior pastor now. And I've matured above that. My only interest now is sharing God's word, not slandering my sister. She has enough problems. All right. I'm just kidding. In my study of the name Dorcas, I discovered that it means doe, like a deer or a gazelle. And that has no bearing on this message whatsoever. I just needed to get it in there. As a matter of fact, the entire Bible has one description of Tabitha. One sentence that describes who she was, what she was about. And it's the very next sentence. Read it with me. It says she was always doing kind things for others and helping the poor. Now come on. Look at this. She was always doing kind things for others and helping the poor. This is the one sentence that we're given about her. Now that's a big deal. Wouldn't you say so? I mean, if you make it in the Bible, pretty cool. If this is the sentence, John, that describes you. Now I want to make sure that we all understand, we break this sentence down, right? Always meaning what? All the time, right? You can, y'all them kids in school, you say, tell me what always means. Always. Okay, thanks. All the time, every day, constantly, right? Doing, meaning what? She was working, right? Kind, meaning inherently good things. For whom? Others. Okay, good. We got through it. It's an awesome sentence. She was always doing kind things for others and helping the poor. Let's see what else it says about her. Verse 37. About this time, she became ill and died. Wow. Spoiler. One sentence, as quick as we're introduced to her, she is gone. Tabitha passes away. There's no mention of what kind of sickness, what led to it. She just became ill and she passed away. And this is what it says. Her body was washed for burial and laid in an upstairs room. All right, I want to pause for a second because I think this is one of those things that you could just read past. And if you haven't done a little bit of the research, you may not understand what it means. And I did a lot of reading on the practices that people went through when they were burying someone. Someone passes away and what they did. And apparently what I recognized in this is what they would commonly do is they would take someone who had passed away, they would wash their body, they would clean them very well, then they would anoint them with oils and spices and different things put on the body, and then they would wrap them in fabric. They would grieve for a very short period of time. That was kind of something that was variable in different things that I read. But the grieving process would be pretty quick before they took them to a place to be buried, took them to a tomb. But apparently what happens here is something very different, Scott. You see it? It says they washed her, and then they just took her and placed her in an upstairs room. This is what I believe happened. All of a sudden, the believers, as they were preparing Tabitha, all of her friends, these people that were coming, they washed her body, and then it was just like, they were just like, stop, pause. We can't let her go. We're not ready to let her go. We're not ready to bury this woman. And not just that, but look what happened. In verse 38 it says, but the believers had heard that Peter was nearby at Lydda. That's about 9 miles, if you're interested in that. So they sent two men to beg him, please come as soon as possible. What do you think they're thinking? That maybe Peter can perform a miracle. Maybe Peter can come and he can speak on her behalf to God or speak on their behalf to God, and perhaps they could do something, maybe raise this woman from the dead. Are you hearing this? I want to tell you, this hit me this week. Actually, it didn't hit me this week. It hit me this morning, and I think that was on purpose. I think God hooked me up. But I read that word where it says, they sent 2 men to beg Peter to come. And I was going to point out, beg, man, that's a serious thing. You go to beg someone, we don't beg, you know. That's something sometimes I just read over that stuff. And I think a lot of times for us as we get more, death becomes more of a distant thing from us. Maybe it's been a while since we've placed somebody in the ground. We don't think about the place that these people are coming from. Just in the last couple of weeks, my grandfather had a procedure done and had some complications from it. And ended up, as we thought he was supposed to come home from the procedure, but ended up he went into heart failure and he was in a very bad way, and it was one of the flip of the coin. That's literally what we were told. And so we had to get my grandmother, she's 86 years old, and we had to, she was planning on coming home. We had to go get her a hotel room and get her set up. And so me and my sister Tabitha and my mother went with her, and we got her in the hotel room, and we laid in the bed together, just all kind of just sitting around on the bed in the hotel room. And I listened to my 86-year-old grandmother beg for my papa not to leave. Beg. That's where these people were. It wasn't, oh, Peter, could you please come? It would be great if. It's, we cannot go on without her. Are you with me now? My papa's fine, by the way. He's healing up, rehab, recovery. Yep, it's a cool thing. It must have made an impact on Peter. Look at verse 39. So Peter returned with them, and as soon as he arrived, they took him to the upstairs room. And when he got there, the room was filled with widows. Do you see that? Filled with widows. Standing room only. Packed to the gills. Slammed. Weeping. And they were showing him the coats and the other clothes that Dorcas had made for them. They were showing the clothes and everything that Tabitha had done. And apparently her acts of kindness, all these good things that she was doing for other people, apparently a proportion of them, a huge proportion of them, was she was a seamstress. She was a clothes maker. And she was making clothes for these people. And blankets and different things. In verse 40 it says, but Peter asked them all to leave the room. Then he knelt and prayed. He knelt and prayed. I don't know what he prayed. I have an imagination. This is I just want you to go there with me. I imagine Peter hitting his knees and him saying, God, this lady is apparently important to a lot of people. This lady is loved. As I came in, people were showing me things that she's done. And God, I know that you have the power to do whatever it is you want to do. I believe that you have the power to do whatever it is you want to do. And I'm going to ask you to raise this woman from the dead and give her back to those widows and give her back to her family and give her back to all the believers here in Joppa because they need her. Turning to the body, he said, get up, Tabitha. And she opened up her eyes. When she saw Peter, she sat up. You see that? Which would be crazy, would it not? I mean, let's just pause for a second. If you're in the room and she was cold, she was cold dead. And you say, get up, and she goes, pop, looks up. It'd be freaky. He gave her his hand and helped her up. Then he called in the widows and all the believers, and he presented her to them alive. That's awesome. The news spread through the whole town, and this is what it says, and many believed in the Lord. People saw Tabitha had died, And they saw Tabitha alive, and they knew, this must be real. This Jesus stuff must be real. And they became believers. All right, did you see the lesson? Did you see it? Man, there's a lot of them, Travis, and there's a lot of them. I mean, you read this story, you pull out all kinds of stuff. Did you see anything in there that could help us be the church? It's an incredible story. The faith, the prayers, the crazy prayer. I mean, just the belief, the faith that it took to send somebody to get Peter. I mean, that is crazy stuff. Unbelievable things, inspiring things, amazing things. But that's not what I saw for us. That's not what moved me. It wasn't what they did for Tabitha that inspired me, although it's inspirational. It was how Tabitha lived and the difference that she had made that captured me. It's those truths about her that we're told. It's the way these people loved her and valued her. Their refusal to let her go, where I believe we can see our part. What it means to be the church. Tabitha lived that. Did you see what she did? It was real simple, wasn't it? She served. She served. Now I want you to hear me. Don't cut me off yet. You got me? She served. This is what it says. She was always doing kind things for others and helping the poor. It seems simple enough, but look at the impact she made. Look at how the church and the community needed her. They were shaken by her loss. Do you see that? This community, this church depended on her. Widows stood in line to grieve her. They essentially refused to let her go. They were begging on her behalf. Can you imagine that? Begging on her behalf. Complete strangers were begging on her behalf because of the kindness that she had done them, because of the service that she had provided them. And God in heaven was willing to send her back. Do you see that? God was willing to send her back. Are you moved by that? Let me hear you. Are you moved by that? Yes. Are you moved by how important she was to so many? I was. She was loved because of who she was, how she loved and served others. I want you to see that. She was a huge contributing part of helping the first church be the church. So much so that God tells us about her in the Bible. Do you see that? She was helping the church be the church. Nothing crazy. One sentence, she was serving. That's what she did. So what does that mean for us? That's what we've been talking about for weeks, right? We want to be the church. We want to help the church be the church. We want to do this. We want to do that. We want to see lives changed, right? We want our church to be for everybody. We want our church to be alive. We realize that we have a part. Tim, we know we got a part. Okay, we got a part. It's important that we do our part. What does that mean for us? How do we emulate this woman? This is what I think. We serve. Everybody serves somehow. Everybody serves somehow. Now, I want to point out a few things, because I know what happens. We start down the list of the things that we have to do, what it means to be the church, and you say something like serving, and all of a sudden thoughts start filling all of our minds. All of a sudden, our own self-esteem, our own feelings start to happen. An enemy starts whispering in our ear this and that, and we start to believe all sorts of stuff. And we start to make all sorts of excuses. I know there's some of you here today, and when I say in order for us to be the church, everybody serves somehow. That's just what's got to happen. Everybody serves somehow. There are people in this room, and immediately you go, I can't make that kind of difference, Tim. I can't do it. I'm not anything special. You think that's true? You say, I'm not special. Yeah, neither was she. You realize Tabitha is not described as a leader, a teacher, a woman of power or great wealth. We're told one simple thing about her. She was a believer. Do you see that? She was a believer. As a matter of fact, the Greek word used to describe her is mathatreia. I had to practice that a little bit. Which means a female disciple. She is a female follower of Jesus. That's what we're told. That's about as it's an ordinary classification of a person as it can be. Therefore, this is what that means. If you're a follower of Jesus, then you are right beside her already. You see that? You say, well, Tim, I don't know. I'm ordinary. Good. So was she. You say, I don't have a title. Good. Neither does she. You said, man, I'm just new. I just believe in Jesus. Great. That's the only prerequisite. Do you understand that? The only prerequisite to serving somehow is that you are a believer in Jesus. Therefore, you own, baby. You're in. Everybody serves somehow. You say, Tim, but I don't have any gifts. I can't do anything cool. Look at Tabitha. It doesn't say that she preached a sermon where thousands got saved. It doesn't say that she preached valiantly in front of the Pharisees and debated them and proclaimed the name of Jesus until they wanted her stoned in the courtyard. It doesn't say that she preached in Damascus and caused such a stir that people wanted to murder her. It doesn't say she stood alongside the apostles and helped share the good news across Jerusalem, or that she healed a beggar on the side of the road. Do you see that? All things we talked about last week. We're told this lady did kind things for others. Do you see that? And it made a tremendous difference. She helped the poor. Specifically, we are told she was a seamstress who made clothes for people. She was a normal lady using a normal skill, probably something that she had developed in her life and used to provide for her and her family and to do different things. And she had this skill, and she said, you know what? I'm going to use this ability, I want to use this skill in order to help other people. There is something inside of you, there's something that God has given you, an ability or a skill or a way that you are, or there's something, and it is meant to be used. It's supposed to just be ordinary, normal old you, using your normal, ordinary gifts and abilities to serve others. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. It's attainable for you. Everybody can do that. Do you agree? Yes. I know some of you are probably thinking this. Man, I've served. I've tried to serve people. I've tried to do things, and man, it's just not easy. You're right. It ain't easy. It's not supposed to be. Think about Tabitha. Because see, I think sometimes we read that and we go, man, she was a seamstress, so she made clothes for people, and that's what we see. But how did she get the fabric? I look at Ann, I'm sorry, I'm looking at you because I know you got this gift. Where'd she get the fabric? She buy it? Did she barter for it? Did she trade somebody for it? Did she have to work and make stuff and then sell stuff in order to get money, in order to buy stuff? How did she find the people in need? How did she figure out what they needed? The sizes they needed? What kind of patterns they like? And I'm looking at you again. How did she do that? I'm sorry. How did she do that? What amount of work did it take for her to put together all the pieces? And then she had to sew, and she had to make those things. And listen, I watched my grandmother. She worked at Jansen's, and then this is not my This is not the grandmother with the papa, and this is not the grandmother that says, hey, smarty pants. It's the other grandmother. But man, she worked at Jansen's, and I remember sitting there in the sunroom we had, and she would be sewing and watching her sew and make things and thinking, that looks like the worst job on the planet. That looks like the most difficult, tedious. I mean, she would sit like this for hours and work on one thing. And I remember thinking, that's awful. But she would do that. And that's one thing to do that if you're making money. It's a whole other thing to do that when it's for somebody else. When it benefits you none. Think about everything she went to. Serving requires sacrifice. It will cost you time. It will cost you comfort. It will take effort. You will have to force yourself at some point to have a good attitude. You will. You're making yourself available for others. It won't always be easy. I know another thing you think. You think because I'm up here talking about serving that I'm talking about Sundays. I'm talking about church. If you do, then you don't know me. But let me tell you something. We serve every day. What did it say about Tabitha? How did she serve? What was the word? Always. Thank you, Judith. Always. She served always. You guys said, I said, what does that mean, always? You said, always. I'm like, thanks, guys. She served always. She served every day. She served constantly. Everything that her whole life was wrapped up in serving others. She was constantly attempting to do it. It was what she always did. I imagine Tabitha going to the market, and I guarantee you she would notice someone without a jacket, or a child without shoes, or a woman without a blanket for her baby, and she would see them. She wouldn't just notice them and then move on. She would make a mental note. She would approach them, figure out how to get in touch with them and what they needed exactly. Then she would take it upon herself to go home, get the material, put a plan together, fix it up, make it, then deliver it. The process took days. You see that? It took days. That's what she did. It took her days to do these things. We have a tendency in church to make people, for whatever reason, feel like when we say serve, we mean on Sunday morning. Everybody awake? Okay. I want to make sure that you understand what I believe about this. Serving on Sundays, serving in church, is the training grounds. That's what it's meant to be. It's meant to be the training grounds for serving Monday through Saturday. That's what it's meant to be. Being a part, serving at any of these tables, it's meant to train you. It's meant to grow you and develop you as a server of people. That's what it's meant to do. For instance, when you work in the kids ministry for 20-something years, that is meant to train you that when you run across a kid Monday through Saturday who's going through something, you know how to approach them. You know how to love them. You know how to talk to them. You know how to help them. When a parent that you work with comes to you and says, hey, I've got this, my kid's going through this, you've worked with it because you've been back there teaching kids about Jesus and talking to them about life and helping them. So you're all of a sudden able to help that parent and give them advice and talk to them about what they may could do for their child. It's supposed to grow you and develop. When you serve as a greeter here, it's all about welcome and inclusion. It's training you so that out there in the world, you become an includer of people. You help people feel welcome. You help people feel joy. You make people feel like they matter in your everyday world. It's meant to train you. You seeing this? When you serve on the worship team and maybe you're back there on a computer and you're serving on a computer and you're worshiping and helping lead people in worship that way, it's meant to be taken to the cubicle at work where you're sitting in front of another computer and you can worship right there because you worship right there. And you bring people into that. We're supposed to serve every day. We're supposed to be servants. I think that this is a great place to start. I think it's a great place to train. I think it helps develop you and it helps grow you. Creates great relationships that we've talked about. But if it stops here and doesn't make it out there, I don't know that that was the plan. You say, Tim, who do we serve? Who is Tabitha serving? We're told plainly the room was filled with widows, right? Lowest of the low in that society. The forgotten ones. The poorest ones. She served them because in them is where she saw great need. She served those. And you know whose example she was following? Jesus. Because at the Last Supper, Jesus was God in the room, yet he chose to be a foot washer. We serve anybody. If we see somebody that needs it, we can serve them. We can help them. I'm not saying you had to go out there and just let everybody beat up on you. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm telling you, you see somebody that's in need. As believers, we're supposed to want to serve them. And there is something that you have in you. There is some skill or ability or something that God has placed in you. And you're meant to use that every day for anybody, always. And if we have any hope of being the church, I'm telling you, we have to serve somehow. We have to serve somehow. Everybody serves somehow. So I want to issue you a challenge. I'm doing good. I got 6 minutes. Good. I want to issue you a challenge. And I've thought all week about how I wanted to conclude this sermon, and Brittany and I actually talked about it. It was one of those that I had to push away from because I didn't know. I didn't know. I had options in my mind, but I just didn't know. And I was like, God's just going to get involved, and he's just going to speak to me because I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to say, but this is what I'm going to say. I talk to a lot of people and spend a lot of time talking to people, and they're looking for purpose. They're looking for life. They want to follow Jesus, and it means something. They want to be on that journey, and something be happening. And we talk about a lot of things. We talk about spending time with God privately. We talk about praying to God and these other things. But one of the things that I always say is I say, your day ain't over. That is how I say it because it's in my office. I don't have to be proper. Your day ain't over until you serve somebody. Your day's not over until you've served somebody. I don't care what it is. I don't care how small it is. I don't care how big it is. Every day you serve somebody. Could you imagine the difference that this church would make if you viewed every day like that? Could you imagine the difference that you could make? Could you imagine the difference in the poor and the widowed and the hurting and the struggling that would happen in this community if I had 500 people or whatever it is that said, my day's not over till I've served somebody? Jesus would be working like crazy. Your day ain't over till you serve somebody. At Golden Corn Church, everybody serves somehow. Y'all good with that? Let me pray for you. Father, I just want to thank you. I want to start off by thanking you for every single person that's here. Thank you for the opportunity to be here to speak with them and to talk about being the church again. I pray, God, that we are taking it upon ourselves to get together. And now, God, I pray that we are taking it upon ourselves to serve others. I look around this room and I know there are people who think that they're not good enough or that they can't or they have nothing to offer. They do. They do, and you put it in them. And you will use them if they take that first step. I pray that you help them overcome that, God. Give them the confidence. Give them the confidence in you to step out and try some things. Father, I know that there's a plethora. I can't even imagine all the ways that we could serve people in this room. All of the different skills and abilities and the ways some of these people are, all the different things that they would see that maybe I wouldn't see, or the ways that they would be able to help. I pray that you begin to bring those to the surface, God, where we see all of the ways that we could make a difference, all the ways we could serve others. And then, God, you bring those into full bloom for all of us to see. Father, I pray this. I pray that you will continue to help us see anybody who's around us, anybody who comes in front of us, no matter how difficult it may be, no matter how far we have to stoop. To kneel and wash their feet. I pray that you will give us your love in order to do that. And God, I pray that you help us do it every day. That you help us love and serve others every single day. I pray you give us an opportunity every day. I don't want one of the people here or watching to have a day where they walk by and they don't see an opportunity. Put them in front of us, God, and help us to do that. And we will give you all of the glory for every single bit of it, because you are in control of every bit of it. Everybody serves somehow. Everybody serves somehow. That's my prayer, God. And Father, I want to do this. I want to pray for one another in that way. I want to pray for one another that we will find a way to serve others, that we will run across people that need us. And so if you will, those that are watching online, those that are in here in the building, look around, pick somebody, and pray for them. Right there in the quiet of your heart, this is what I want to do. I want you to pray for somebody. I want you to pray for them like you mean it. Pray for their family. Pray for their growth. Pray for them to feel God this week in a real way, leading them in this life. Father, I'm thankful. I'm thankful for just the opportunity to pray for one another. I'm thankful that I know you hear. I'm thankful that you heard that day. You heard them praying for Tabitha, and you raised her up. You did an incredible work, and we're thankful for that. And we're thankful for an incredible story. I pray that you will lead us to have stories very similar. In Jesus' name, everybody says amen. I want to ask you to do me one favor. Listen, I've been saying it, and I know some of you have done it and some of you haven't. If you prayed for somebody, let them know that you prayed for them. Do not underestimate the difference it makes just them knowing that you prayed for them. I love you. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Sunday. Bye-bye.